Pennsylvania has the toughest anti-abortion law in the United States. Some folks around here don't like it. The inside story coming up.
This is Inside Story with Mark Howard. Our insiders today are Chuck Stone of the Philadelphia Daily News, political activist Mary Hertig, Brian Tierney, political consultant, and attorney Bill Litton. And now, here is Action News senior correspondent Mark Howard.
Good morning. The state of Pennsylvania now has what is described by most people as the most restrictive abortion law in the United States. It was in Pennsylvania where the Senate last week came out with a new bill, which they passed by a 2-to-1 margin. Vince Fumo of Philadelphia voting against it, by the way. Happened to see his face up there. Stephen Friend, of course, from the House, the author of the bill and a staunch supporter of all restrictive legislation where abortion is concerned. And of course, in response, as you see there, some 150 to 200,000 women and supporters of the right to choice gathered in Washington last week to make their position known. Clearly, the issue is back again on the front burner. Unless the Supreme Court reaffirms Roe v. Wade in a hurry, we're going to hear an awful lot more about abortion. The question this week in Pennsylvania is, what actually is wrong with those new restrictions? Some people say they are, Mary Hertig, simply safeguards to make sure that things are done right.
The new bill in no way enhances the medical safety for pregnant women in this state. In fact, it does the opposite. One provision imposes a great risk to pregnant women, and that provision is the ban on abortions after 24 weeks. The legislature has decided to make medical decisions which it has neither the expertise nor, I believe, the authority to make. A woman who is experiencing toxemia, for example, which can be diagnosed at 24 weeks but does not become a threat to life until 36 weeks, she now will be hard put to find a physician willing to risk the penalties of loss of medical license, 15 years in prison, and a $7,000 fine.
But the threat to the life of the mother would
at 36
this,
weeks.
So, but at any time.
The physician may not be willing to operate to terminate that pregnancy until the woman is indeed dying.
That's at the baby's coming.
At 24 weeks, yeah. No, indeed. That's when toxemia poisons the blood and the woman is now on her deathbed. At 24 weeks, it can be diagnosed that that condition is prevalent, or is present. But a physician may not be willing to do what is medically and therapeutically required to terminate that pregnancy for fear of the penalties against him.
Brian.
Even Roe v. Wade in the Supreme Court said that the state had a certain, that states have a definite interest in the third trimester of a pregnancy. We're talking about here the 24th week. We're talking about pretty late in the second trimester, and I think that the state does have a right to come in. I mean, we're talking about basically 6 months down the course, and this, you know, we have 27 weeks now. We have viability in a child. In a fetus. I think these restrictions that the state of Pennsylvania, no matter where you know, it's being simplified by people saying, hey, I'm pro-abortion, I'm pro-life, I'm for it or I'm against it. When you look at the specifics here, when you look at 24-hour cooling off period, my gosh, we have a 3-day cooling off period to get a marriage license. I mean, to get married. We're talking about 24-week abortions. We're talking about 6 months.
What about notifying a husband, Bill? Do you think that a husband has a right to know if his wife wants to have an abortion?
Absolutely. And if I want to name somebody else as the beneficiary in my life insurance policy when I go to work at a company, I have to have my wife sign an acknowledgement that she agrees that I can do that. I think it's not unusual to have husbands and wives on important matters affecting their marriage and their own interests to acknowledge that they have been consulted on something.
Charlie,
I think
you're frowning.
this is a think twice bill. This is a think twice bill. That's what this is.
It relegates the wife to a connubial serf. She's subordinate to her husband. Now, on the bills, as you said, you sign insurance policies jointly. But no, but that's a matter of law. But
no, if I want to name a beneficiary other than my wife on my law firm or my company's policy, I have to get her to sign something.
Oh, I accept that. Sure, fine.
Well,
that's
am I a connubial serf?
No,
because she has to sign that before I can decide to give the money to you?
That's
no, that's his insurance.
No, it's my life.
No,
it's my life. Why does she have to agree to that? Because it's a marriage and a partnership.
We're not even talking about agreement here. We're just talking about notification.
That's right. That's the issue.
No, but
notification of potentially we're interfering in the private lives of women. Potentially a woman is separated from her husband and conceives a child by another man. She is now forced to expose her private life to her physician get a note from a man she's estranged from, and I find it an unconscionable and unconstitutional invasion into the private lives of women.
Let's not talk about a separated husband. Let's talk about a husband and wife living together. Does a husband have a right to know if his wife's going to have an abortion?
Most marriages, good marriages and healthy marriages, a woman and a husband would consult, but it is not your right or my right to make that decision for a woman who finds herself in a pregnancy that is not one she can bear.
It's a surgical procedure. Nowhere in America does a husband, have to tell a wife of any kind of surgical procedure, like a vasectomy that he's undertaking. Yes, he doesn't have to notify her for that.
Chuck, if I slit somebody's throat, I guess you could say that that's a surgical procedure, but there's more involved here.
Oh, I know. That's a crime. That's a crime.
Okay, what about Pennsylvania? Why is the state of Pennsylvania, for whatever reason, A, leading the nation in the toughness of its abortion law, B, doing it by 2-to-1 margins, and C, having elected a very pro-life governor, and perhaps going to elect him again? What do you make of it, Brian?
It's just something that there's several factors here. One is just what Pennsylvania is, which tends to be a more Catholic state, a traditional state, your typical kind of northeastern state, unlike New Jersey, which has different trends and history. The other part of it, I think, is the power of one man. I mean, we've said before, I've said on the show, give me 5% of the people who are really committed to something and riled up, and we can change laws. Here we have a fellow in Stephen Friend who is truly a national leader in this movement that he believes in. And just as we see the power of a Lech Walesa in Poland to change things, we're seeing the power of a Stephen Friend, and there is not that other strong singular force on the other side.
I would agree with you, except for I think there is a growing singular force, and I believe that we did not change the legislators' minds, but in 1990 and 1992, when we elect new House and Senate members, pro-choice may, in fact, change their faces.
NARAL has put Stephen Friend on the hit list. They want to get him.
Nationally.
Do you think they can?
I think what you will find, we have not seen a politically sophisticated pro-choice movement, but we've seen an outpouring of hundreds of thousands of pro-choice persons willing to volunteer in campaigns and certainly willing to donate campaign dollars. I would encourage pro-choice candidates to challenge incumbents, because now is the day when they will have lots of money.
Send your cards and letters to Mary Hertig. Chuck, what do you think? Can they stop Friend? No.
I don't think they can stop him. I think they're going to make life miserable for Bob Casey. He could be defeated because of the balance of power of the pro-choice voters. But nowhere in this past election this year did the pro-life people win anything. Nowhere. You can't cite one candidate that the pro-life people supported, nowhere in America, and that they won. Nowhere.
Well, you could say on that issue.
On this issue alone.
Stephen Friend only won with 53% of the vote in a district that is 60% or over to 66% Republican.
I think it was 57, but I don't want to nitpick with you. Here's a tough question. If Barbara Hayford, female Republican pro-choice, is the Republican candidate for governor next year, would you, Chuck Stone, Democrat, vote for it?
No question. I wouldn't have the slightest hesitation. I mean, I feel so strongly about this issue because it involves freedom to control one's body. This is why all the black elected officials unanimously, I hate that word, unanimously, Congressional Black Caucus, all the black legislators in Philadelphia, all the black women leaders, including Rosa Parks, who marched, unanimously are opposed to restricting abortions. Now, why is the black community unanimously opposed to this?
Probably because it's
I'm
not...
I'm marching with them.
I'm guessing in large part because there are very few Catholics who are black. Now, that may or may not be true. There is a religious element here, no?
I don't think it's...
I think that's
Bill,
much to say.
is there something to that?
There's a religious element, there's a moral element, there's a medical element. I mean, there's a lot of elements. I really don't know. I think that's an interesting thing. Not all Catholics are anti-abortion.
Can Barbara Hayford pull your party together?
But I mean, it's not just Catholics. I mean, you can go to I haven't done a study religion by religion, but I'm not sure that you can break it down and blame this all on Catholics or give them all the credit, whichever way you're on.
Support the right to abortion. Right. The polls, 67%. The polls, Mark.
But the majority of the people in the movement, I think,
everybody always talks
are Catholic, pro-life.
Yeah, that's right. That's true.
Well, this wall is going to stand forever. But the wall between East and West Berlin, that wall is coming down. We'll talk about it when Inside Story continues.
I mean, that's going to stand for in the end, I think.
And I thought that was one of the better segments. I don't know about that.
It's time for the fun, the spectacle, and the tradition of the Channel 6 Thanksgiving Day Parade. Join Lisa Thomas-Laurie and Dave Roberts as they highlight the marching bands, elaborate floats, and larger-than-life balloons. Special guests include your favorite soap stars from Loving, All My Children, and One Life to Live, plus Cinderella direct from Disney World. The one and only Channel 6 Thanksgiving Day Parade, Thursday morning at 9.
If you want a friend 6 months ago, this man's heart suddenly gave out. He had no pulse. He could no longer breathe. He got help from someone who learned CPR at the Red Cross. They got help from the United Way. Thank God the United Way got help from you. The United Way. It brings out the best in all of us.
Big day in Philadelphia today. Lech Walesa is scheduled to spend the day around the Delaware Valley. He, of course, in the United States, basically looking for money, but also looking for support and being, if you will, in the Congress of the United States and other places, a symbol for freedom worldwide. He, of course, 10 years ago was he described himself as a humble electrician. I don't think he knows what they get per hour here. In any case, Walesa is here. The wall is coming down. We have souvenir pieces of the wall all around the Action newsroom. John Rollins was there looking at it. A very thrilling scene to see literally 1 million people at times crowded around various sections of the wall between East and West Berlin. Holes in the wall now exist. People are going back and forth. Some are saying flatly that we are now seeing the end of the Cold War. Others are saying we're seeing a pause in it while the Russians regroup. Who knows? The key question, I think, this morning, though, is does Ronald Reagan, who played hardball for 8 years with the Soviet Union, deserve some credit today for seeing what some are describing as the effects of a hard line? Chuck, what do you say? You want to give him credit?
Absolutely not. He had very little to do with that. This comes from the people, the impulses for freedom. Furthermore, the Russian economy was in shambles. I maintain that consistently. And you had Gorbachev instead of Brezhnev or Stalin. Suppose Stalin had been in power. You think he would have glasnost today? Of course not. He would have gone eyeball to eyeball with Ronald Reagan. Or
and let his people starve?
No, not let his people starve, but he would have threatened if he would not have backed down the way he did.
Okay, the simple argument goes that the United States, by escalating the arms war and continuing to play missile for missile for missile, put them in such terrible economic straits, they had to slow down. Is that true?
Yeah,
give him credit for that?
Give him credit for that, but I'm saying that...
Write that down, Mary. Chuck's giving Reagan credit.
Partial credit. I'll do it. I'm going to my turn.
Because you had Gorbachev rather than a Stalin or a Brezhnev or a Khrushchev there. I think if you had a
what would they have done?
They would not have backed down. I think they would have been prepared to go out.
Let their people simply starve.
I think they're prepared to go to war. I mean, it took Kennedy to put the blockade around Cuba before Khrushchev backed down when they had the Russian missiles in Cuba.
Well, all hardliners aren't Republicans. I mean, that's...
No, I know that, but some of them are Democrats, but I think it's oversimplification.
Would Gorbachev have done what he's done now if Jimmy Carter, the appeaser, was still president? And I don't think he would. What has happened, not just Ronald Reagan, his hardline over the last 8 years, but every hardliner, and basically even the Democrats, thank God in terms of foreign policy, the presidents have been hardline. Truman, Kennedy, Johnson over the years, except for Carter. And what we have shown them is that that $10 trillion or more that we've spent on defense has been worth it. Because we've had 40 years of peace, and as a result of that, we have basically shown them that they can't keep up with us on defense, they can't push us around that way, and the economies that they have, these unstable economies, which from the get-go were unstable, have just fallen apart now. So now there's a dynamic there. Ronald Reagan deserves credit, though, because we were in a much different situation in 1980 when he came in than we are right now. He created the foundations for peace, and even now, with all this euphoria going around, we have to keep in mind that we have to keep a strong defense.
On my left is Mary Hertig.
Very
on
much
my extreme left.
The arms buildup under Reagan has caused this to happen. You are forgetting to factor in the incursion into Afghanistan, which is what bankrupted the Soviet system.
Because we gave arms to the opposition to make it tough for the Russians over there.
We certainly aided the opposition, but that was an incursion not unlike Vietnam. That's like saying the Soviet Union is the reason that the North Vietnamese were victorious. That was
well, they didn't hurt. No, wait a minute. Yeah, they didn't hurt.
They helped, but that war would have had an outcome similar.
But getting back to the basic question, do you think that the hard-line foreign policy yielded some fruit in this general direction?
The sort of communist bashing, red baiting that Ronald Reagan engaged in 8 years had nothing to do with it.
How about the spending?
We are watching the collapse of an economic system, and I think that the media we are sitting in right now, the television has a big role to play in this. We are no longer isolated nations. We watch television, and the Eastern Bloc nations have been watching countries of a much higher standard of living. There's a real sense of a personal need for freedom that's come about through watching other countries where people are free.
While I hasten to add, while 15% or so of their gross national product was going to defense.
And so is ours.
No, 6.
What, 6%? Sorry.
Big difference.
Big difference.
Big difference.
Almost 3 times as much.
And the question is, by spending and by keeping this arms race going, did Ronald Reagan put the screws to them in terms of their ability to give their people toilet paper?
Well, I don't think Poland and Czechoslovakia and Hungary and Bulgaria and East Germany have been spending that kind of GNP, certainly not East Germany, on
their
national
numbers are
defense.
hard to find. Bill,
you make
shed a little light in here.
Well, you liberals make Ebenezer Scrooge look good. You guys won't give credit to anything. And I know the typical liberal response, 6%, 15%, what's the difference? It makes a big difference. You go to Poland and what we saw there, I think that Reagan deserves a lot of credit there as well in what he did when the martial law was declared, how he put the screws to Poland. What you're seeing in Russia is really a reaction to what happened in Poland. I think it started there. And I think the buildup and all across the board diplomatically and militarily what President Reagan did, with the Congress's support, even some Democrats, I might add, set the stage for this to happen. Gorbachev is not a humanitarian. He's not there to be a nice guy. He's doing this because it's in his own best interest. He has to do it. It's a result of a lot of world forces that did not happen in a vacuum. And to say that Reagan gets no credit for that is myopic.
We didn't put any military pressure on Poland, and their economy is in shambles.
We put economic pressure on him.
But not any military pressure.
But we put economic pressure.
All right. Wait a second. The important point is, for years we've wondered, why were we in Korea? Why were we in Vietnam? Why were we in Afghanistan? We were in all those countries so that we could enjoy this day right here.
Okay, you got the last word on that. Now, the next question is, what happens with one Germany? Are we going to have one Germany? Yes. Should we have one Germany?
Well, the East Germans clearly want one Germany.
You think
the West Germany's don't?
That he needed to achieve what he did, but I think it's Lech Walesa is clearly to me the man of the decade.
My person of the decade is Mikhail Gorbachev. Now, a lot of people think that he was just the right man at the right time of history. I disagree with that. I think that somebody else in the same place, kind of might have tiptoed, tried a little this, tried a little that. He literally leapt into another direction. And what he did was open a window that let in air all over Russia that thawed the Cold War. I'm only hoping that we can keep the temperature up.
A lot of people are going to say, geez, Herb, why did you pick Oliver North? Oliver North did something that no one else ever had the courage to do, and that was to call Congress a bunch of leaking liars, that they leak information to the press. They got nailed by the press, and Oliver North had the courage to stand up and say that the reason we didn't tell you anything is because you can't keep your mouth shut. Oliver North may, in the 1990s, vindicate himself and come out as a hero.
You like him.
I didn't say I liked him. I just admired him because he said to Congress a lot of things that the American people would like to say, and no one ever did it before. And he did it in uniform.
Oliver North.
Liar, scary, good Nazi who follows orders. A frightening period in our history.
Now let's talk about Jimmy Carter, the man who lost the White House to Ronald Reagan, and Walter Mondale, who failed to take it back, and Michael Dukakis, who failed to keep George Bush from succeeding Ronald Reagan. Question: can the Democrats ever win back the White House?
I think the Democrat Party is going to have to get more mainstream. You can't run a campaign as the Democrats did on total liberal policies that, the poor and the homeless and the AIDS victims and the people, and that is their true issues. But there is a society in America that are winners. 90% of the people in America are winners, and winners want a positive attitude. They want a positive candidate. That, I think, is what destroyed the Democrat Party. They dealt too much with the negatives of America.
If the Democrats want to get back in the White House, they'll have no problem if we have a recession or if Dan Quayle takes over the presidency from Bush. That'll be a shoo-in. The problem with the Democrats is they need a candidate with charisma. I mean, we haven't had anybody with charisma since John Kennedy. We've had McCarthy, and we've had Carter, we've had Mondale. They have the personality of dry toast. The other thing that I think the Democrats really need is a strong social agenda. And on a serious note, we have very serious social problems in this country, and I think that the party to occupy the White House in the 90s is going to be the party that comes up with the kind of social cures that the New Deal did for the economy.
A lot of people say, what will it take for the Democrats to win back the White House? Certainly an armed militia is one of the things that first comes to mind.
So the only thing the Democrats have to do is to act more like Republicans. The Republicans have been winning the White House and doing very well in politics. The Democrats have to shed that liberal image, recognize that the country has turned conservative to a great extent and act a little bit more like Republicans, and I think they'll do just fine.
Yeah, they had Joe Montana and Madonna as for president and vice president. No, I think they could win the White House if they came with an outstanding ticket. For example, Governor Bill Clinton of Arkansas, who was a Southern moderate, very attractive, whom everybody wanted. Couple him with an outstanding woman from the Midwest, Congresswoman Pat Schroeder. Put those two together, Bill Clinton from Arkansas, Pat Schroeder from Colorado. You'd get the South, the West, some of the big states, the liberals, and they'd wash the Republicans away. But the Democrats are too stupid to do that.
As our little gathering continued, the subject switched to Philadelphia. Where's the city going, and where has it been?
The 80s were a disaster for Philadelphia. On the surface, you have a lot of buildings being built, but you look at what's happening in the city, the homeless in the streets, the filth of the streets, the smell of the streets, the crime of the streets, the crack in the streets. It's an unpleasant place to visit a lot of time, unfortunately. And I think that when we look back, we're going to see that so many people were moving out of Philadelphia. We didn't have the leadership, political leadership we needed. City council's a joke. We've had move. I think that the decade of the 80s has been terrible for the city of Philadelphia. It can only get better.
The only thing I can say about Philadelphia in the 80s, that it was the city that bombed.
Well, I think the big story in Philadelphia in the 80s has to be the move story. It's something that, it's an image that Philadelphia will never live down, in my view. It was a terrible day, as Mayor Good put it, but I think it was more than that. It said something about Philadelphia and its leadership, and we're all going to have to pay a price for a long, long time because of what happened here in Philadelphia, and the loss of those 11 people, 5 of whom were children, is something that we'll pay for.
I just hope the city will still be here in the 90s. The city of Philadelphia is under and I hate to keep badgering Wilson Good or the administration.
No, you don't.
No, no, I do. I'll tell you why. Because Wilson Good really got a bad rap in the press, and he got a bad rap because we don't want to take into consideration that a lot of federal money that came into Philadelphia in previous administrations did not come into Philadelphia under Wilson Good's administration. The fact that he's inept and a lot of great expectations of Wilson just didn't materialize in the 80s doesn't mean that the truth is that we just didn't have the money. Federal money didn't come in. Law enforcement money didn't come in. Massive federal projects didn't come into Philadelphia. For the little bit of money that he did, look, let's face it, Rouse built a tower and we put the skyboxes in, and these are things that are positive. But in reflection, to be honest, Wilson Good did not have that federal money coming into Philadelphia, and you have to do with what you got. You can't raise it from nothing.
Now the mayor, Wilson Good, probably the most picked-on person by our rotating panel of insiders. So who should be the next mayor?
My choice for the next mayor would be Richardson Dilworth. So,
rest his soul.
Rest his soul.
Yeah, of the living now.
Mark, I think we have 2 years to debate who's going to be our next mayor because it's much too early to speculate.
Well, I would love to see Lynn Abraham as the next mayor. She's a common pleas court judge, former head of the Redevelopment Authority. She's a tough cookie. She's smart. She's witty. She won't get it, but there you are.
Who do I think? I haven't the slightest idea, and I'm going to pray on this and ask God for divine guidance. I really haven't the slightest idea. I think all the turkeys are the ones that are leaving. I mean, how can you choose between Lucian Blackwell and George Burrell? It reminds me of the words of Christ on the cross, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? When you get candidates like that, we're being forsaken.
I have a sentimental choice, and I think it'd be a good one for Philadelphia, and that's Thatcher Longstreth. Thatcher Longstreth, I think, knows more about city government, is more committed to the government and to the people here in Philadelphia, and really deserves a chance. And I think he'd be a great mayor.
I think the next mayor of Philadelphia is going to be a very interesting person. He's going to be lively. He or she is going to be interesting and lively. At this point, it's still early in the game. A lot of personalities being talked about and bandied about. But I think Lucian Blackwell is probably going to emerge, and he's going to surprise a lot of people.
I would like to be mayor of Philadelphia, just to find out whether I could do anything worse than Wilson Good did or previous administrations. I really would. I'm not announcing my candidacy here, you know. I've got a good thing going. But, you know, I don't want to work 7 days and 7 nights a week and end up with palpitations of the heart.
The subway gunman who shot 4 would-be muggers and went to jail for illegal use of a firearm. Well, here are 2 different views of the man and the events.
Bernie Goetz, I think, did for New York subway system what the Philadelphia Police Department, the New York Police Department couldn't do, and that is he put fear in the hearts of the hoods.
For the week that he was at large.
For the week that he was at large, New York was safe. It's a heck of a thing to say, but a vigilante, a nebish, if you will, which translated means a nobody, put the fear in the heart of the thugs. Maybe we can have another Bernie Getz that shoots blanks and create the same fear.
Bernard Getz set out to send a message and to make a statement, and in turn, he got some mail back. His message was, you people can't terrorize folks like me. We're decent people. We have rights and liberties, and you just can't take that away from us. Our system of jurisprudence said the people you define as these people are citizens and they have rights too. And just because you harbor some preconceived fear or notion or some racist stereotype about people does not give you license to go and carry a weapon and open up on them.
He lost, huh?
He lost, and that was the message sent back to him, and we as Americans are all the better for it.
As our decade-ending get-together came to a close, our gang recalled some of the names that will always remind us of the 80s.
Bill Cosby, he's ubiquitous proof that for one night a week, America is colorblind.
Gary Hart, you know, in the 80s, it turns out that you cannot commit adultery and make it in politics. And everyone said, well, it doesn't make any difference what a politician's private life is. Gary Hart proved that times have changed, and I think they're going to stay changed.
Jesse Jackson, I think, is one of the truly great Americans, a man of vision, a man of, he's articulate, he's all the things that we would hope our leaders would be. He's a visionary. And say what you want about him and criticize him all you want, but Jesse Jackson has shown Americans, all Americans, black and white, what can happen when one man has a dream.
I think maybe Jesse Jackson should go into the field of entertainment like the Jackie Mason. He's a great stand-up orator. He can deliver, he can get, but I think Jesse Jackson's peak is reached.
Jesse Jackson was the one voice articulating compassion in the 80s, and thank God for him.
Dan Quayle, he's Bush's life insurance policy.
Dan Quayle's the kind of guy who goes to San Francisco, leaves town, goes to San Diego, and then they have the earthquake. I mean, Dan Quayle's a lucky fellow.
Dan Quayle inspires America's kids in grammar school because they all know that they're smarter than he is.
Gee, I will remember Jim and Tammy Baker for her eyelashes, her vulgarity, and his thievery.
Christianity says if you have faith and in your salvation and in your God, you will rise again. He will see that you get up from that.
And you think they will?
I think they will, not to the extent that they did before. They're not going to be real rich people again, but they will be rich in terms of their own personal souls and some of the mistakes that they made in terms of their own humanity they won't make again. And
you really are a nice guy.
I'm a Christian.
The Bulletin, if everybody read the Bulletin, it would still be here.
The Philadelphia Bulletin, I think, has been replaced by MTV. Unfortunately, people do not read anymore, and the demise of the Bulletin left Philadelphia with two newspapers controlled by the same company. The Philadelphia Inquirer has been stated to be the most overrated newspaper in the country. The only thing they're concerned about are Pulitzer Prize awards. Their news, in my opinion, doesn't meet the reputation that they're supposed to have. I would like to see a good, hard-hitting newspaper, afternoon newspaper, late-night newspaper. Maybe Philadelphians will start reading again.
Every newspaper has a personality of its own, and no matter how wonderful other newspapers are, it's like losing a member of your family in a way when you lose a newspaper, and that's how I feel about the Bulletin, a tremendous loss.
Vanna White, she proves that a full bosom, flat buttocks, a toothy smile, and an empty head can pave the way to success.
Willard Rouse.
Well, you remember in 1984, he's the gentleman who decided to build a building about 300 feet higher than any building had ever been built in the city of Philadelphia, over the hat of William Penn. I think he's now going to be known as the Rouse that soared.
I treasure the memory of the woman in white in 1984 accepting the nomination to be vice presidential candidate of the Democratic Party in San Francisco.
And that's all, just a memory.
I wished it could have been different.
Nicky Scarfo, had it not been for the murders, and there we go again, had it not been for the murders, Nicky Scarfo only does what the government does. Sold protection, the government sells protection, confiscates your money, the IRS does that. What did Nicky Scarfo do so bad? See, Nicky, instead of you should have never killed anybody. That was your big mistake. But all you got to do is copy what the government does, you'd be home free.
The videotape recorder, that's what turned us into a nation of couch potatoes.
on our own schedule.
Gary Hart. I would only order rice if I was at a Chinese restaurant, and I think Gary Hart made that mistake when he was out there. Gary Hart was the pop phenomenon. Gary Hart was the pet rock of the mid '80s, and like many flashes in the pan, he's long gone.
Margaret Thatcher, Coria Aquino, Sally Ride, Geraldine Ferraro. Women are coming to their own in this last decade, and I think in the next decade we will probably see a woman. Definitely a woman elected as vice president. I'm optimistic about that. I'm looking forward to it.
Lekwa Valenza. Wonderful man, and everyone's favorite labor leader, and including, what always amuses me, many conservative people. He spoke to Congress. George Bush says wonderful things about him. Everyone loves a labor leader as long as he's in Poland.
I think Gorbachev is a great boon for democracy and taught people around the world what freedom really means. I think he made it possible. I'm not sure he meant to do that, but I think that was the effect of giving people a taste of freedom and a new look at life, and it just opened them up for all kinds of things, and we have a different world as a result.
Vanna White, if she had taught more little boys about the alphabet, we wouldn't have an illiteracy problem in this country.
I think the moral majority was a very natural reaction to a combination of a free press and a free society. When people in our society felt the freedom to express themselves in so many ways, and the press was reporting that, the natural conservatism of the country was expressed through a number of ways, the election of Ronald Reagan. The moral majority was a natural reaction to that, I think. And I think it might have had some bad parts to it, but I think it embodied a really deep feeling that, hey, what's happening in the country? I don't think the moral majority was all bad. I think it did a lot of good things in terms of focusing attention, focusing the debate, and making people address some of the issues, the moral issues that are important to us as a society if we're going to survive.
The moral majority was never a majority and certainly wasn't moral.
It seems they never agree on anything, and they promise they'll continue to disagree every Sunday morning right here, right into the next decade. We'll be back next week, next year, at this same time. For everybody on Inside Story, I'm Mark Howard. Have a Happy New Year.
Tour with world-class